Hey, this is Nika Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
Yo, this is Terrence Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
And you're listening to the snobOS podcast, the podcast for Apple snobs where we talk all things Apple and then some. Welcome back to another week. We want to first start off saying thank you to our patrons for their support. You too can become a patron for as little as $5 a month. You will get access to our live taping, access to our pre-show, and also access to our Discord chat. So we definitely encourage and hope that our listeners will definitely support us on Patreon, which will allow us to do some more things, some extra things.
Yep, we have to. I think we have to change our intro around a little bit because we say podcast, but actually we're a show. So maybe
True.
snobOS show that we also have a podcast, but we also have a show based on the support for Patreons because we've been able to upgrade our software, do some extra things. So definitely thank you for the Patreons, that we've turned this in from a podcast into a show.
Actual show.
Huh?
Yeah. May have to rethink that. Definitely. All right. So this week, let's start off with the lowdown where we talk all things Apple. So we're pretty lowdown heavy this week. Wasn't a lot going on out in the tech world. So we'll start with the lowdown. And the first thing that we have on tap is that Apple just released a new beta for iOS, iOS 13.7. And this beta includes support for COVID exposure notifications. So I think this was just released today. This morning, the beta. And so what this beta will do, it will focus on how we handle COVID notifications. So it's expanding the COVID-19 exposure notification API, and this will allow users to opt in, keyword opt in, to COVID-19 exposure notifications without having to download a separate app from your local public health organization. So it looks like this is a partnership with Google because it is an API, and both of the companies said that there would be two phases to this particular piece of technology. And the first phase we've already seen that came out in iOS 13.5 that required users to download the app from their health person. I think we did a walkthrough of this.
Right.
Because it wasn't necessarily something that was tracking you. It was pretty much the onus was on you to, make sure you had all of the necessary information for the particular app. But this time around for phase 2, what they're doing is allowing users to opt in for the notification without having to install the separate app that we talked about previously.
Right. But in order to, diagnose or come up with verify a positive case, you still have to download an app from your public health authority to confirm, like I said, a positive COVID-19 case. Now, once you do that, once you've confirmed it, then that's where this 13.7 exposure notifications thing goes into, where if you opt in for these notifications, you won't need a third-party app to get a notification that somebody has verified they have COVID-19 via their public health authority and get notified to all the people they have possibly, allegedly could have come in contact with. So it is onus on the person who is testing positive or needs to confirm that they're positive to do that extra work. But once they do that extra work, anybody else that's opted in to this new exposure notifications, they don't have to do anything. They'll just get a notification saying, hey, somebody you've possibly come in contact with has tested positive. Here's the steps you need to do.
Yep. So I think it's just, indicative of the world that we live in, that we're going to have these types of tools and applications to remain safe and, be aware of what's going on around us. So just another step in that direction. All right. So the next thing, we've talked about it before, that we expect Apple to release iPhone 12 maybe sometime in September or October. We're not really sure yet. But what we do know, based on this article that we're reading from 9to5Mac, that the FCC has increased the 5G spectrum in what I'm assuming is going to make additional room for Apple's new 5G devices, which we're assuming is going to be the iPhone 12.
Right. So basically what they're doing is they're making spectrum, 5G spectrum available. Apple or Verizon, or well, not Apple, Verizon, all the wireless carriers.
Sprint, AT&T, yep.
Right. They have to bid on getting access to that
that range. Yep.
Right. But FCC has made it available, which anything this leads to says the iPhone is going to be 5G, because they didn't make this extra spectrum available when Samsung came out with a 5G phone, or whomever else has a 5G phone. Huawei, a couple other manufacturers have 5G devices, but the iPhone is the big dog, right? So if they are going to roll out a 5G device, FCC has said, okay, well, we need to make sure
there's enough bandwidth.
Right. So again, like you said, it's up to the carriers to bid on this spectrum to make it available for their customers, but it is out there.
FCC is making it available and saying, hey, whomever, if you want it, you better come and stake your claim and get your piece of the pie for your users. So I just think that just further confirms what we've already suspected, is that the iPhone 12 will be 5G.
Right. Better be.
If not, I am going to be pissed.
Right. Y'all been holding out for too long now, so go ahead, roll it out.
Go ahead. Come on. It's about time. And speaking of the iPhone 12, some more images have allegedly leaked. I'm going to try this. So Terrence did the show last week. It's my turn this week, and we're using this new software. So I'm going to try and share my screen.
Trying to produce the show.
Trying to produce and give you guys some visuals of what we're seeing. So for this particular article, these are the visuals that have leaked, that they're saying is what the iPhone 12 Pro Max will look like. So like we mentioned last week, it's going more to the body frame of the iPhone 5S that has it's more square with the curved edges. You still have a little notch at the top. Scroll on down and see what the camera lens looks like, because they're saying that it is going to have the triple lens design, and I know that it's in here somewhere. There it is. So this is what they're saying the back is going to look like. Again, triple lens. So this is some more alleged leaked images of what we can expect. The new iPhone 12, this is the Pro Max version, that they are saying.
And it does look like an iPhone 5S, which a lot of people are giving Apple a hard time. It's like they're recycling the same look and design. But if the design that they originally rolled out with looked pretty good, why not update it? Because it is updated. Like you said, during the iPhone 5S, there was no notch at the top. And I actually like the notch at the top, because without the home button, it differentiates between an iPhone and any other devices out there, right?
Yeah.
So I actually like that design detail, because like I said, it differentiates. Doesn't have the home screen like the iPhone 5S. It has way more screen real estate.
It's edge to edge.
Than the iPhone 5S.
Yep.
And it has the additional cameras on the back, unlike the iPhone 5S. The only things that look familiar is the The side panels, the aluminum mid frame around
Scroll
the
back
edges
up.
of the iPhone, and the back. I don't think the back is going to be glass, unless
Yeah.
I'm mistaken. I think
I
it's going
don't
to be
think it's
aluminum.
glass. I think it's aluminum. I don't think I saw anything about glass. But
Right.
again, I mean, it's a phone. What type of innovate? I don't think you can really innovate on the
well,
design. You can innovate on the materials of the
the
design.
next Well, the thing that everybody's trying to do now is a foldable device. Microsoft has their foldable device that they won't call a phone, but I mean, it's a phone, but it's not a phone. Samsung has their Galaxy Fold. There's been rumors that Apple is trying to mess around with a foldable device. So, outside of that, I mean,
What else
you
can
can
you
only
do?
make them. You can only make them thinner. You can only make them faster. But as far as you got to put the guts somewhere.
Yeah.
So there ain't too much changing you can do to a smartphone. Again, like I said, until the folding devices become mainstream, and that ain't too far off.
Right. And I know that it's down the road, and Apple is definitely not going to come out with that until they are certain that they can have a quality device, unlike what we saw with the Galaxy, that whole debacle with their foldable phone. And this is just another article that came out with some additional possible leak of design, and this one has the different colors, and this is probably the iPhone Pro and not the Pro Max. So this is the entry level tier of the iPhone 12 that will likely
Right.
have these different types of colors. So I'm going to scroll through and see if there are any more images. It's similar to what we've kind of already said with the entry level tier. It doesn't have the triple lens. It has just the regular dual lens. They're a bit bigger. But for the most part, this is what is being leaked as what they will possibly look like. So
All right.
with that being said, let me produce this show over here. So let's go back to us.
Don't forget to go back to us, because I
Right.
forgot a couple times last week.
Yeah, I was like, let me go back to us. So speaking of making sure that Apple comes out with a quality device, this particular article, which is of interest to me, I've been harping on this for probably going on 2 years now. So according to this article from Bloomberg, it's on 9to5Mac, but it's from Bloomberg, and the title is Apple developing, quote, less ambitious, end quote, wireless charger following AirPower cancellation. So if you remember before, when Apple was trying to come out with the AirPower Mat, it was you can put your phone anywhere on the mat. It will charge, your phone. It'll charge your AirPods. It'll charge a multitude of different devices, and you don't have to be very specific with where you place the device. You just put it anywhere on the pad, and it'll charge. As we know,
and and it will charge only exactly what you need to charge it up. Once it's 100%, it'll stop charging.
yeah,
That was one of the features of the new one, or the original one as well.
right. So that seemed to be a bit too much on the plate for the AirPower Mat. So they pulled that version. It looks like they are rebooting it, but with not as much gravitas as its predecessor. Based on this article from one of the Apple analysts, I'm not going to say his name. He is of Asian descent, and I'm not going to chop it up. But we
It's
will.
Ming Chi Kuo.
Okay, I'm gonna. There you go. That sounds great. I'm gonna let you say that. We as we talked about what the original benefits were for the AirPower Mat and its ultimate demise. It doesn't look they're specifically saying what the less ambitious AirPower Mat will be, but based on what we just said, it probably will be more specific of you're having to place the device in a certain location. I'm assuming probably the algorithm and the code they had to have behind it to calculate each different device that you have on the pad to determine what the maximum, what rate the power was at to get it to the maximum. So I'm assuming that may go away. So I think it'll probably just be a power charging mat where you can put a couple things on there, but you have to put them in specific locations for them to charge. That's what I'm guessing it will likely be.
Right. So you probably won't be able to charge your iPhone and your AirPods and your Apple Watch. It may just be a pad to where you can only charge your iPhone and your AirPods, or 2 iPhones, something like that.
Probably two devices at one time, not necessarily
Right.
a bunch. The max may be 2.
Right. Now, conversely, Nomad has a base station Pro that this story mentions, and the base station Pro from Nomad, you can charge 3 devices at one time, and it's anywhere charging, so you don't have to find that sweet spot in order to get the charge to quote unquote activate, which this sounds like a more advanced version of the AirPower Mat. And I must admit, I have the Nomad base station. I don't have the base station Pro. I have the regular base station, and I can charge 3 things at once. It has the little slant that I can put my Apple Watch on. I can, if I very carefully move my iPhone and my AirPods case around, I can get all 3 of them to charge at one time, but I have to really try.
You have to finesse it.
Move my devices around to where I can get all 3 to charge. This base station Pro, it doesn't have the stand for the Apple Watch, but according to this, you can charge 3 devices at once, and you just plop them down and it works. So whatever Nomad is doing, maybe Apple needs to buy Nomad so then they can use their technology to finally come out with this AirPower Mat that they've always wanted to. But until then, it looks like they have dialed it back some to where they're going to roll out an AirPower Mat, but it ain't going to be Apple's wish list version of the AirPower Mat.
And they may be on par with the Station Pro, the Nomad base Station Pro, but I think, like I said earlier, I think it's just the fact that they were trying to do too much at one time, and now they've had a longer amount of time, and they're scaling it back. It will probably still be a really good device, but likely the whole calculating the multiple different devices to charge them and then stop charging them, that feature probably won't be there.
Yeah.
But,
and if they want to do it, they just go ahead and buy a company like Nomad. That's already doing it.
And say, okay. You can do it. Yep. So hopefully, I can get off of harping of wishful thinking for this. Maybe they'll go ahead and deliver this product for me.
Don't hold your breath. Do not hold your breath.
I'm not holding my breath, but I am still hopeful. All right. The next article, we touched on this last week, and the battle between Epic Games, the creators of Fortnite, and Apple and Google is still on. The fuel rage is on. So they're coming out with a new season of Fortnite, Chapter 2, Season 4. It will not be on iOS or macOS. This antitrust feud that they have going on over the in-app payment process that Apple allows and what Epic Games wants. It's all been, legalese. It's been to court. So what happens is pretty much any iOS or macOS device that has Fortnite, they are essentially stagnant at the version that they have. They won't get any new seasons or any new features. They'll only be able to play what they currently have. And they will only be able to play with other Apple device people. So you won't be able to play
with Android.
with your current version, with your whatever season. I'm assuming this is season 3 that they're on now. I don't know. I'm just guesstimating based on what they're calling the next one. Based on season 3, you will only be able to play with other Apple people. You won't be able to play season 3 with an Android person. It's only Apple to Apple at this point. So that's, I guess.
I hope this works, because I don't know. I mean, I haven't done the research, but my guess is most people play Fortnite on a console.
Yep.
If they do play Fortnite on an iOS or an Android device at all, it's probably not as serious. It's just in passing in the waiting room.
If they're traveling, they're, like you said, waiting somewhere.
Get your car fixed, waiting in the doctor's office or the dentist's office or whatever. Then you may pull it out and play a little bit. But the amount of competition that I've seen people try to play with in Fortnite, I don't think it's feasible on a mobile device. So, again, like I said, I'm hopeful maybe Fortnite. I'm proud of y'all for sticking to your guns, but we'll see what kind of effect this has when season 2, chapter 4 rolls out, and it doesn't roll out for iOS or iPad. That's going to be the indicator if people are that upset about it. Epic wants us to believe that there's going to be this uproar,
this huge fallout.
We'll see. Right, we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that huge of a fallout. Like you said, most people play it on consoles and not on their smaller screens for their phones or tablets. If you're like shooting and jumping and rolling over things, because I saw my nephews play it, it's hard to see all of that's going on a small device, because you have to like go in like caves and corners and dig through to find weapons and hide from people. I mean, it's a lot going on, and I can't really imagine any high level of playing this game would be on a mobile type device. So we'll see. And I think that Epic, they wanted to have an injunction or some sort of freeze on Apple for the way that they do the in-app purchases, but the courts ruled in favor of Apple. So they were trying to still force Apple to see things their way, or to have the in-app purchases their way. And it looks like that was shut down. So it looks like, this new season won't be on the iPhone devices. And depending on what the courts say, it may be that way for a while. I really can't see, this being an easy solution. I really think this is probably going to be a long-term battle. Apple is notoriously known for dragging out court cases because they have the money and they can. So it should just be interesting to see how this all unfolds, and if Epic Games, if their bluff, well, I don't call it a bluff anymore because they actually went through it, if their challenge or if their stance is really going to be, worth it in the long run from them.
Props to them for sticking to the guns.
Yeah, honestly, after they did the whole commercial and made a big thing about it, they couldn't fold at the first sign. They have to kind of roll with it, or else they will look extremely weak and people be like, well, what was the whole point of it? So they have to ride it out. Even if they plan on eventually folding and relenting to Apple's current in-app policy, they're going to stretch out a little bit just so they don't seem like, wusses or
chumps.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the last thing that we have for the lowdown is apparently Apple apologizes to WordPress for no longer requiring free app to add purchases. So I'm not familiar with this. You want to take
right?
This?
So speaking of chumps, speaking of backing down, Apple has actually backed down from WordPress in the sense that there was a big issue earlier this summer about the WordPress app and Apple doing a epic like move and forcing WordPress, the free version of the app that never sold anything, they forced them to add in-app purchases on their free WordPress app in order for them to then Apple can take their 30% and then get WordPress updates back into the App Store. Again, the whole issue with that is the WordPress app is free. They don't even offer in-app purchases. But the issue, according to Apple, was that if you go through the WordPress menus and get deep enough, it'll show you a list of premium versions to WordPress. Like you can pay for your own domain name. You can, do things like pay for hosting. You can buy additional themes, but you could not do that through the actual app. But you did get access to the premium version and list what all the things to see. So according to Apple, y'all have to put a link to that to the main app in order to get updates back into the App Store. So there was a big hubbub about that. Again, the CEO of WordPress, Matt Mullenweg, I think I said his name, in a series of tweets earlier was like, hey, I mean, what do we got to do? I can't fight this. So I guess we're going to figure out something to get Apple to release updates to their app. So everybody got mad, everybody got upset, everybody harped on the fact that the app is free. You can't buy anything, you can't in-app purchase anything from WordPress. You just see a list of their premium services. That's not fair, that's not fair. And Apple was like, well, maybe we jumped the gun on this. So they actually, over the weekend, no longer required WordPress to add in-app purchases to their app in order to get updates and get back into the App Store. So kind of like a 180 from the Epic. Of course, the situation is not the same, but the fact that Apple will not back down to Epic, but has kind of backed down or reversed course with WordPress, who maybe this is precedent. Again, the situations were totally different, right?
Yeah.
Epic was literally trying to circumvent Apple's in-app purchases, where WordPress on the other end didn't even offer anything, and Apple was trying to make them offer something so they could
get a cut. Yeah.
So they get a cut, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest difference between the two is that, Epic is trying to make money, and the WordPress folks, they're like, we just giving you themes to build websites. We're not, there aren't any purchases inside. So I think that's probably the sticking point and the key reason why Apple was amenable to reversing course, to say, okay, we'll change our mind on that. But they're not reversing course on Epic.
Right. So I'm just going to read this quote from Matt Mullenweg, the CEO from WordPress. This is him putting in a tweet. My understanding was the previous decision from Apple was final, and we had already made many of the arguments people suggested privately or over the several weeks that Apple's locked. We will continue to be responsive, to do our best to be within both the spirit and letter of the App Store rules, including closing any web view loopholes that pop up, which is the thing I was mentioning. You couldn't, if you went deep enough, you could actually see the offerings, but you couldn't really do anything with them. You just got to see them. This also made me appreciate the freedom of the open and independent web. My life's mission and purpose of WordPress is to increase the freedom of the internet. I hope in addition to native apps, people continue to create websites and web apps that provide accessibility, autonomy, and freedom to the widest audience. Future generations deserve it. So that was kind of like his winning speech after Apple finally turned around and said, well, maybe we jumped the gun. I don't know if that was they finally understood what WordPress was trying to do, or they kind of folded under this pressure that everybody leaned on them for the fact that they were really trying to force WordPress to make more money so then Apple can make more money, which kind of seems underhanded. So we're not sure what side they came on, but they did kind of back down. So
Yeah. And that's good. I mean, especially with all the points just outlined, they weren't trying to make money off of that. So good for them. Good for WordPress and good for Apple for, actually saying, hey, okay, fine. We won't force you to force people to spend money so you can get money and so that we can get more money.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for the lowdown. Let's head on over to Second String where we talk all other tech. So we don't have a lot of things to talk about this week in Second String, but one big thing that has come out this week is back in 2016, there was a huge data breach from Uber where 57 million users' information was exposed. So the reason that this is back in the limelight from a 2016 breach is because the chief security officer, well, now former chief security officer, has been arrested and charged with trying to conceal that the data breach ever even happened. So this was filed in San Francisco, and Joe Sullivan, who was the chief security officer at the time, they're alleging that he led a scheme to withhold and conceal that hackers were able to get into their system and the amount of data that was exposed. So again, Sullivan and Uber, it says, arranged to pay the hackers $100,000 in exchange for signing an NDA about the hack, so that no one would know about it.
Well, not just that. They wanted them to sign an NDA to say that the hackers had not even accessed or stored any company data. Uber didn't disclose the breach or the payment until late 2017. So not only did Uber have to, or according to this thing, was going to pay them, they had to sign saying that, they never really breached anything or hacked anything or never stole any data in the first place, which is crazy.
Right. That you would even, it's one thing to try and pay people to say, okay, kind of go away. But it's something even bigger to have them to sign a legally binding document to say that they didn't when they actually did. So essentially lying.
Right.
So it's pretty amazing that, the audacity of it all for them, because they've.
It's not surprising though, but this is back when the founder CEO what I can't even say his name. Travis is his first name, but this is when he was CEO. in lead, and this is when it was the Wild Wild West as far as Uber was concerned.
Yeah, they ran him out of there.
They ran him out of there, got a new guy in, but obviously there are some lingering things as a result of that whole era when Uber was kind of running wild.
Right. And it says further down in the article that we're reading from CNN that in September of 2018, Uber agreed to pay a $148 million settlement into the investigation. Now, the settlement was across the 50 states and Washington, D.C., but I don't know. It doesn't really say if that, maybe I haven't read down far enough, if that was actually ever paid out to those who were affected by it. But it did cover essentially the whole United States plus Washington, D.C.
I don't remember getting any sort of class action.
I didn't, and I used Uber heavy, and I don't remember getting like the little email about the settlement or anything about that. So
maybe they didn't even pay people. They paid a fine to the feds as a result to settle an investigation in the 2016 data breach that they were accused of intentionally concealing. So maybe this is a fine. It's not a class action lawsuit to where it's like, hey, we're sorry your data got breached. Here's $12.
We're going to actually not pay you and not let you know, but we're going to give, because reading the line in the article says the settlement with attorney generals for all 50 states and Washington, D.C. was the largest ever multi-state data breach settlement, according to the New. So they paid a settlement to the states.
That was a fine.
That was a fine. Yeah, and the fact that they use settlement instead of fine is very interesting as well. So so this didn't go to those of us who had our data breached, but rather to the states. They had to pay a fine. That's interesting as well. With 57 million people's data being exposed, you're not going to offer any credit monitoring, give them their $12 checks. You're just going to say, oops, sorry. We tried to cover it up and get people to lie about it. Oops.
But we squared up with the government.
The government said we're good, so we're good. Interesting. So it should be interesting to see, what type of jail time, if any, that he gets. So it should be interesting. Interesting. So we'll see how that plays out, if there are any actual tangible results from the guy who kind of orchestrated this whole thing. So it'll be interesting to find out. All right. So the next thing that we have to discuss in Second String is PS5. It's now back on the radar. Apparently, we may be able to pre-order soon. So the date hasn't been confirmed by PlayStation. Really nothing has been confirmed by PlayStation other than the fact that they had an announcement that said, "Ooh, here's our new game console. Isn't it cute? Isn't it dope?" We don't know when you're going to get it. Well, we're not going to tell you when you're going to get it. We're not going to tell you when you can order it. And we're not going to tell you how much it costs. But rumors are that it will launch this holiday season, and that it may possibly be available for pre-order beginning on September 9th. So we'll see if that actually happens. The person who is leaking all this information, I don't think he has his real name. He goes by Tony Stark on Twitter, and his handle is at Ironman PS5. So whomever this person is, he's still sticking by his prediction that it will cost around $4.99 and be ready for Black Friday time frame. But for pickup. So we'll see if September 9th, that's only a couple weeks away. So we'll see if it will be ready for pre-order on that day. They're saying that the reason that September 9th, I guess, kind of came about is that the original PlayStation was released in North America on September 9th, 1995. So
it's just
it's a hunch. Guess. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Nothing confirmed because, like I said, PlayStation hasn't really confirmed anything other than what it looks like and some of the games that it will have. No price, no pre-order, no ship date. So I guess we'll all just have to wait and see with bated breath as to when this will be out for the masses. But I thought that was interesting that is coming up now. So it's a lot of things coming up possibly for pre-order in September. So I hope y'all got y'all's money ready. New iPhones, new Macs, new PlayStations, all coming around in September. So I hope y'all been saving your money up through the year, because it looks like if you're into the gadgets, September is going to be a busy month for your debit and credit cards.
All right.
All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up for Second String?
Nope.
All right, so let's head on over to For the Culture. So I have a few things to talk about and For the Culture this week. None of them are specifically relating to technology, but they're of interest to us, so we're going to talk about them. So Versus, we've talked about some of the Versus battles that have happened previously. The next iteration is an R&B Versus between Brandy and Monica is scheduled to happen on August 31st, live at the Tyler Perry Studios here in Atlanta. And if you are around our age, a little younger, a little older, we all remember the huge Brandy Monica era. They had a huge hit together. They were both came out when they were teenagers. Of course, Brandy started out on TV, and Monica started out in the music lane. They had this huge hit together, "The Boy Is Mine." They won a Grammy for it. It was notorious that they had beef. There were arguments, petty things going back and forth. I think it was even some physical altercations.
I don't remember any of that. I remember all that being alleged. I remember nobody could. It just assumed that they had beef, but nobody could really substantiate anything specific. It was just rumored, and people just ran with it.
And
that's just my.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And this is prior to the social media era, but they do snipe. They have in the past, since the social media era, sniped back and forth at each other on social media. Nothing blatant and outright. It's very kind of petty, passive aggressive. They both were hugely influenced by Whitney Houston. Brandy's brother Ray J dated Whitney allegedly. And
no, it wasn't allegedly. He did that.
Okay, we'll take allegedly off. I was trying to be a little politically savvy, but and Brandy did Cinderella with Whitney. Of course, Monica is an Atlanta area girl. Whitney and her family lived here for a long time, so her and Whitney had a close relationship, and it was a lot of back and forth with who did Whitney actually pass the baton on to. So it was a whole bunch of that.
None of them, neither of them.
A lot of that going back and forth. when I think whenever Whitney's birthday would come up and Monica would post something about it, Brandy would have to kind of one up it and say, well, she was actually my godmother. That kind of, ticky-tacky back and forth. But Brandy had been up to doing a versus with Monica allegedly, and allegedly it was Monica who was pushing back on doing it. Now they're both in agreement. They're going to be in the same room. Versus battles originally started out as what they were called battles. Now it's more of a music appreciation between the artists. So as you can imagine, this is a lot of our teenage, young adulthood. So the stands were out in full force on Twitter. I actually had to mute both Brandy and Monica because it was getting pretty ugly out there on the Twitter streets about, well, Brandy didn't do this, well, Monica did. I mean, it was just a bunch of snip. And I'm like, y'all are ruining this. This is a really fun, great moment. Both of them have amazing voices. They have great music. We've all grown up with it, enjoyed it. They're around our age. But I just had to go ahead and mute their names because I was like, y'all taking the fun out of this. It was, how Twitter has jokes. So it would be like the fun banter back and forth things that were funny. But then people, of course, have to be too serious. And it was just like a whole, let me put her stats up against hers, or, well, she was in Cinderella. Whitney actually sang with her. I mean, it was exhausting. I was like, I just wanted to have fun with this. I just wanted to enjoy it. So I'm hoping everybody gets all of their snipping out of the way. So come August 31st, we can just enjoy the music, enjoy them being together, and have a good time reminiscing back to simpler times when we didn't have COVID and Black people being murdered, so blatantly and all that. Your face says it all.
My face says this is blown way out of proportion because, number one, like I mentioned before, I don't remember it being, even before the social media era, that a lot of alleged issues between Monica and Brandy, even when social media came out, I think people blew this out of proportion between them two. I think with women in general, and Brandy and Monica specifically, because they're so close in age, they were so close in stardom around the same time,
Mm-hmm.
that people wanted them to have beef amongst each other. Maybe that bled, what imitation, life. What? How does that phrase
Art
go?
imitates life.
Yeah, art. Or
Maybe life
yeah, art.
imitates art in this case.
Right, right. So as a result of them, Brandy and Monica, getting tired of people bringing up all this nonsense, it actually got to them to where they maybe said a couple things back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
trying to clear the air. But of course, that everybody took that as they got beef against each other. So all that, and then what you mentioned about all the people trying to compare catalogs amongst Brandy and Monica. Can I keep it 100%? They got all of maybe 5 songs that they could actually play together, all back to back, because the versus battles, like just the last one between uh, um, uh, Two Chains and
Rick Ross.
what's the guy? Yeah, Rick Ross. They had 20 and 30. If they didn't have their own songs, they were featured on a whole bunch of hits, right? So, I mean,
They
how
have the
much money
catalogs actually. They both because
do
they,
they
they they do.
do they
They
do
do.
they
They do. They
do
do.
they
They do.
like
They
they
do.
were before this they were before the internet. They were CDs and albums. They do.
They do.
I don't
Watch it and see.
believe.
So someone actually, because you know how stands are, they did a breakdown, of side by side of what they could play against each other, and they have them because you have to think. Not only do they have their own music, but they were both, and when they first came out, movie soundtracks are really big. So I think Monica had a Space Jam song on a soundtrack.
One
Um,
song. Keep going.
so it's just those type. I'm just saying as an example. But looking at the list
Uh-huh.
when they did the rundown side by side, they can do it. I think they both. I think Monica. I think Brandy has like 5 albums. I think Monica or 5 or 6. They're very when they did the side by side stats because I did look at them. They're
And
very
they have full
comparable.
albums. Don't give me that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they don't have songs. They don't have the catalog. But the songs that came on the radio, or the songs that we play in old school parties, 90s parties, the songs that were certified Grammy hits that you would think that they would play at one of these versus battles. Do they have enough of those?
Yeah,
Yeah, they have
yeah, they
songs.
have enough because I think actually Monica has more number one hits than Brandy does. So I'm
Okay.
telling you, I looked at the list and they're
Okay.
there. So I'm excited about it because I don't know R&B. They are my age. Their songs kind of spoke to my sensibility with that age. So yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
As long as
I
people don't
will
ruin it for me because they've already
I will
tried.
be I will be excited for you,
Thank
and
you.
I will live vicariously through you.
Thank you.
Uh yes.
Thank you. Because I'm ready for it.
Okay. All
So
right. Well,
similar to
you
some
make
of the
sure
other
to
ones, yeah,
you'll
people
make
are
sure to
like,
give us the rundown
I
next week.
shall. They were like, they're getting their outfits ready, so it's gonna be a fun time. I'm looking forward to a fun time, and I think Versus is really stepping up their game because, of course, I think,
Well, they're learning and growing.
yeah,
Before, they was having people Skype in and
yeah,
IGN, and that wasn't working. So they're actually, and they got money from Apple,
yeah,
so they're flying people out, or they're setting up um, a actual event at a one location, which
yes,
cuts down on a lot of the issues that people were having, because the internet and wireless and not knowing how to use the technology. Now if you look at the past five, right after maybe Erica Badu and Jill Scott, they've all been in the same location, and they don't have to touch anything. They
lessons
can
learned.
Right. They can talk to their DJ or whoever's queuing up their music, and that's all the interaction as far as technology is concerned. Everything else is handled by the production crew and whomever's behind the cameras and whoever's manning the boards, right?
Yep, because
So
I
they've
think,
grown.
yeah, I think Swiss Beats is usually, at most of them. So,
Well, I would be too if
yeah,
Apple forked out all that money.
yeah. And this particular one is sponsored by Ciroc as well.
Hmm.
So, and they'll
So
be at Tyler Perry Studios. So, Monica lives here. I think Brandy spends some time here. So yeah. So it should be a fun time. I'm looking forward to some good old fashioned nostalgic fun. So,
okay, all
yeah,
right, all
yeah.
right.
All right. All right. So the next couple of things we have to talk about are a little bit more heavier. The first thing we're going to talk about is what's going on in Wisconsin with the shooting of Jacob Blake. If you aren't aware, a black man was breaking up a fight between two women. Police, of course, were called for the fight. After he broke up the fight, he was going back to his car because his children were in the car. He was shot 8 times, I believe, in the back by, oh gosh, is it Kenosha? Is that how you say it? The Kenosha
Yes.
Police Department.
Hmm.
So we have another person who is a hashtag. Fortunately, he is still alive.
Right.
Apparently, he has significant damage, of course, being shot in the back. Right now, from his father, they're saying that he is currently paralyzed from the waist down. They don't
Hmm.
know if it's permanent or not, but
Right.
he is currently still recovering from being shot that many times in the back. So I brought this up to say we've all, talked about Black Lives Matter and the fact that police, are overstepping their bounds. I want to talk about it from a different angle this week. I haven't watched his video. I haven't watched the last, quite frankly, few videos of these situations because it's just too traumatizing. So I wanted to ask you, viewing these videos, whether it be on the news, whether it be on social media, do you think that it's additional exploitation of Black trauma, or do you think these videos need to be shown for, I guess, change?
Well, we can't avoid them not being shared. We can't avoid the news not showing them for reporting purposes. So I a necessary evil is I wouldn't look at it as a necessary evil. Well, I guess it would is a necessary evil because I don't think we're going to be able to avoid them. Now we can choose not to watch them, but that's not going to stop them from being shared, right? I
Right.
haven't watched the actual footage of this recent one with Jacob Blake because, again, that goes to the point to where it's like I don't want to be what's the word, numbed to the act, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you watch enough of anything, it won't become as
You become
um,
desensitized.
yes, that's the word I was looking for. I couldn't think of the word. Desensitized. I don't want to be desensitized to a anybody, black, white, otherwise, being killed at the hands of police, and it wasn't warranted. I think the thing that people still either ignorantly or purposely choose to see is that it wasn't warranted. Now, the information that I have read about it is they did have a scuffle between Jacob Blake and the police prior to him returning to his car and prior to him getting shot. So I don't know if the police wanted him to stop moving. I don't know if they wanted him to cooperate. I don't know if they wanted to ask him questions and he did not want to. So as a result, he got into a scuffle. And then after that scuffle, he got free, walked to his car. Police didn't want him to. Maybe they assumed he was going to get a gun. Maybe they assumed he was going to flee the scene. According to the family, according to the witnesses, he was going to check on his kids who were in the car. That's the whole, he said, she said, we won't know until the investigation, yada, yada, yada. But even still, it's still, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most people, that it wasn't warranted, simply because, number one, he wasn't the person that was involved in the original call. He was there because I'm assuming he knew somebody, he was related to somebody, he was a peacekeeper. But which is always tending to be the problem, is when police pull up on the scene, for whatever reason, they see an African American, a black man,
and they assume that he's the one.
He is the target. He is the target, right? Without doing any sort of whatever
investigation, asking questions,
investigate, whatever the case may be. They see this brother and they like, hey, you, and I can see that me not wanting to comply when it's not, I'm not the issue, I'm not the problem, or even if I am, right? Me being upset about the police coming to harass me for something unrelated to anything that need a bunch of police officers to jump on top of me, I'm going to resist. And I don't understand why people can't see, like I said, ignorantly or on purpose, see that that can get to you to where you want to resist, especially when we've seen videos of people who are not black who have been able to resist, who have been able to run away, who have been able to actually shoot at or directly harass or threaten police officers and lived to tell the tale, right? It's so frustrating that, okay, if you're going to harass people because they're not complying, harass everybody because they're not complying. You can't, where is the picking and choosing, and why, and what is the methodology, and what is the real reasoning, rhetorically speaking, of course.
Right.
Why are they only targeting some people with this extra level of threat and not for everybody, when it should be across the board, right? So I think that's the whole thing. But getting back to the original question, I think it's necessary, because you have to see what's going on, and hopefully that will force some admittance of fault in order to move forward. Because if the cops are going to stand their ground, and the protesters and the people who are advocating against defund the police and all the police reform, if they're going to hold their ground, then we're just going to bump heads, right? So it's almost like the video, it's almost like okay, you can't avoid this. Now, what do we do about this, right? But at the same time, it's happening so much,
and there's still nothing changing.
And still nothing changed. I mean, we just went over this with Ahmaud Arbery. We just went over this with Rashard Brooks, the guy in Atlanta, Rashard Brooks,
Elijah McClain.
We just went over this with George Floyd. We just went over this with Breonna Taylor, and now it's happening again. It's like I can very easily see how people would just throw their hands up and say, "Oh, it is what it is." And if that's the case, then we're going to end up going backwards, right? Instead of making any sort of change. Yeah.
And I think I find it interesting. I was reading an article before the show, and there are protests, of course, in this city, Kenosha, and it's interesting to me that these militias are helping the police. So you have, let's be honest, these white folks, these white men out here with these automatic rifles, helping the police. Who gives them the right to help the police? And also, I read that one of the leaders of the militia sent a letter to the police saying, don't send us home, don't send us away, we're here to help, don't threaten us with arrest. What gives them, first, the right to say we're going to help the police? Secondly, we already see that there's bias there.
Right.
People have a right, it's a fundamental right of being an American citizen to protest.
Right.
Who are they to come out and say, we're going to help you with these thugs?
Right.
We are going to help keep the peace. And folks, I don't know if it's true or not. This is what they're reporting. They're saying that the police, in one hand, would be thanking the militia folks, giving them water, while at the same time trying to force, people whose right it is to protest, to disperse and go home and threaten them with violence. I mean, I just don't understand it. And the 17-year-old who was a part of a militia in Illinois who murdered 2 people at a protest, he was able to walk into the police station and turn himself in. It's obvious to me, and I would think it would be obvious to people who are willing to see what it is, to say that this isn't right. We can't keep going on this trajectory. We can't.
Well, again, like I said, going back to the video, we hope that video evidence would show a clear issue. And as a result of that clear issue, changes would be made. But the problem is people are fed up, and everybody is so up in arms that when something like this happens, everybody immediately jumps into their own camps because of history, right? It's not, when somebody gets killed by the cops, it's always been, hey, let's go tear something up. That hasn't always been the case, right? But history as of recent, past 10 years, has shown that nothing changes. And I think people are tired on both ends, right? Everybody's tired. The people who can't relate to why we want to tear up businesses and loot and do all, they don't understand why. And then the people who are doing the protesting, and it escalates regardless of, there's no conclusive evidence to who's actually doing all this looting, and right. But if you want to pin it on the protesters, sure. The protesters can't understand. Well, why can't you understand that we've tried to do it peacefully and nothing's happened? So this is the only way we can get your attention. But the attention that's showing up is everybody says, oh, CNN and NBC and Fox and all these people jump in on the rioting part.
But they don't show the peaceful protests.
They do show the peaceful protests, but then the extravagance.
It's not as sexy as, something on fire.
Exactly. So that's when everybody jumps into all, late night exclusive breaking news, yada, yada, yada. But when the protest is like, oh, protests, they're coming in at 6:00, and then that's about all the thing that they're going to report on, right? So everybody jumps into their own camps, and it's going to be tough, especially with this whole political thing, the politics, and how they're using all of these different instances to for and against. And it's just, I hope, we all hope that this evidence, this video, would finally say, okay, something needs to be done. But again, nobody is willing to wait, because it's like history has shown nothing has happened, right? People say, well, why? I don't understand why they're burning down the business. It's like, well, when again, to take this to take Exhibit A, when Colin Kaepernick,
when Cap was kneeling,
NFL players took a knee and did peaceful protests, y'all hated that too. So it's like, well, they might as well burn something up to get your attention.
The squeaky wheel gets the oil, right?
Right. But is that then the end result of that? Will that force people to say, okay, we need to make a change, because we don't want property being burned up, or do people, even like I said, get deeper into their own camps and nothing changes, so
I think it's the latter. I think people are already on their side, and there's nothing that anybody can do that's going to change that, because they're already saying with this guy, well, why did he resist? Why didn't he just follow and do what they said? We've already seen that doing none of that helps.
Nope.
The end result is still the same. A black person is still murdered or hurt, or children. I mean, they did this in front of this man's 3 children. So now you have to factor in the trauma of not only of their dad being hurt, but they witnessed their dad being hurt. And how do you explain that to them?
Right. So, now, So, jumping right into the next section of this, right? The I hate to say it, but the only way some people will change is if somebody's pockets get hurt, right?
Dollar
So,
bills.
right. So the Milwaukee Bucks, this is right around the time playoffs are starting.
NBA playoffs.
NBA,
Yep.
they have figured out how to play and keep the players safe, to keep the staff safe, to keep the coaches, keep the journalists and keep everybody safe with and resume playing the NBA. So that tonight was supposed to be when the Milwaukee Bucks were going to start
Game
their
three.
next round, Game 3, and they have decided that they're going to boycott in protest of the shooting of JacobBlake. So
Nobody's playing. The NBA canceled all the games now.
right. So as a result, the NBA has canceled, all the games, right? Like you said. So I mean, maybe this will, as kind of loosely connected as it is. I was talking to my wife about it earlier, and I was saying, well, the Milwaukee Bucks boycotting the NBA, how does that, in protest, how does that directly affect, what's happening with the police in Wisconsin? Because they're kind of, police is run by the city, which is run by the state, but the Milwaukee Bucks, that's a
private organization.
How do you tie the two together? But again, maybe it's just all about bringing awareness and forcing people to address the issue on a non-violent basis, right? Because with the Milwaukee Bucks protesting, they're not looting or they're not doing a traditional protest to where the Milwaukee Bucks are not walking to the state capital of Milwaukee or Wisconsin or whatever the case may be and doing the traditional protests. By them not playing, the NBA has to report on why. Why are they not playing? They're not playing because
they have to make a statement. Yeah.
Well, what happened, right? So police killed this guy in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Well, why did he kill him? So it forces people who otherwise may not know, who are just to watch the NBA playoffs, to, like you said, forces them to make a statement, and that in and of itself is the link to where it's a peaceful protest. People finally are starting to come around to the idea of, okay, well, we're mad at y'all for looting and stealing stuff and tearing up property. Okay, so let's show you how we peacefully protest, and we better not hear nothing. We better not hear y'all, bumping your gums as to why you don't understand because of this. Because, okay, we showed you peaceful protests. You said, well, that's not right.
Don't do it that way.
Don't do it that way. Now we're showing you the rage and the looting and the burning, and now
don't do it that way.
All right. So one of you got to take one of them, right? So which one?
Or what they would prefer for us just to go away and just deal with whatever's happening. Shut up and stop. Yeah, shut up about it.
Right.
That's the option. That's the option I think they would prefer.
Right. But I don't. Again. Hats off to these players, because the players are the ones that control the NBA. You can say the NBA does, you can say the owners do, you can say the fans do, but
if nobody's playing,
right, all that is null and void. So hats off to them for using their platform to actually have people address the issue. Now, what comes about as a result, who knows? But now we have to address it because this is pretty big. This has been the first time players have said, I'm not playing.
And hats off to the WNBA as well. They've joined the boycott, so they are not playing their game 3 either today.
Right. So, just from just want to read, one of the players had a statement in this story from Rolling Stone. Says, we're tired of the killings and the injustice, Bucks guard George Hill told the Undefeated. We've got LeBron James with a little bit more colorful language. We demand change. We're sick of it. These are some, again, these players have a lot of influence.
They have a lot of sway. They have a lot of pull. They're very influential people. And what I equate, this boycott of the games to is it boils down to inconvenience. People want to go and watch their games and live in their happy bubble where they don't have to deal with this. This is forcing an inconvenience for them. A lot like when people are protesting in the street and they block off the street and you can't drive to where you're going. It's forcing an inconvenience on people who this wouldn't otherwise affect. Therefore, they have to pay attention to it.
Right.
So
exactly. So hats off to them. Hopefully, something comes about. Hopefully, all we can do is hope.
Yeah.
But, again,
and definitely pray for his family. Jacob Blake's family, his children.
And that was the other thing. Before before we move on to the next story, the only difference between the other stories and this one is Jacob Blake gets to tell his side of the story.
Yep.
One of the things I've always believed with police killings and police shootings, they always say, well, you have to neutralize the threat. You have to make sure the threat is neutralized. But my opinion, as scary as it is dead men tell no tales.
Nope. And
if people were been able to tell their side of the story, we may get a different outlook on this. And it's be interesting to see his side of the story, because he was able to survive this, even though, like you mentioned, he may be permanently damaged as a result. But at the very least, now once he's back to some sort of health, he'll get to tell his side of the story, and that's something we haven't been able to see.
We've only seen it from the view of the one side. So now they can tell their side of the story, and we'll get his side of the story. A lot like what happened with the Toronto Raptors president.
Yep.
Because the police are still saying that this guy was the aggressor, even though you have video to contradict that. Even on the night that it happened, you had eyewitnesses that said that he wasn't the aggressor. You had video that says he wasn't the aggressor. Now the official word has come out, and you get to see the full picture. But it's that way where you can see both sides, and then you have the truth.
Yeah, for those who don't know, the Toronto Raptors, when they won the NBA championship last year, the president was, according to the video that we all saw now, the president, brother, I can't pronounce his name.
Nope, not going to try it.
Right. So he, according to the video, the body cam on the police officer, he's coming towards the court. He's coming toward the police officer, and you can see
him
sticking his hand in his jacket to pull out his credentials.
You can see part of the credentials when he was reaching in there.
Right. So you see him starting to pull it out as he's walking towards this police officer. Police officer puts his hand out, puts his hand on the shoulder, on his chest, and then actually pushes the guy away. The guy says, well, why are you touching me for? They have back and forth words. He walks towards him again, trying to pull his credentials out. And this police officer is undercover, off-duty police officer who's working security, pushes him again, right? But as a result of before the video, this police officer said the guy was aggressive, the aggressor.
He attacked him.
He attacked him. I had to do physical therapy. I was injured.
He's still on paid leave, and he's suing the guy.
Right, and he tried to sue the president of the Raptors. Well, after the video shows clearly, as
what we already
knew, day, that he did not trust this brother in this suit and decided he was not going to let him pass, regardless of whether or not he had credentials or not. Luckily, right, it took Raptors teammates and Raptors officials to actually go, and players to go get the president
and pull him onto the court.
Which was supposed to be this, I made it, we did it, I'm supposed to be celebrating, but in the back of my mind, it's like, did I just get profiled? So all that.
But the thing to say, but to even say to that, even though we clearly saw what happened, the chief of sheriff or whatever they call the head guy, he's telling people, don't believe everything you see. It's more to the story. Bro, you actually going to come out on record and say it's more to the story? What? What's more?
Right,
they're still hanging on to that.
Right. So what is that, right? Is it pride? Is it prejudice? Which one is it? Especially when we have video. So going back to bringing that back to Jacob Blake, the fact that we do have video of what happened, and he
And his
is
first person
able,
account.
once he's right, we can get his first person account. Maybe that then those two combined we'll start to see
Get some
what
justice
is
for him.
really what's really going on. Whether we get justice or not, we can clearly say there is a bias. You know, I mean, from there, what do we do? But you can't. I would like to hope, as a result of this video, you can't argue the fact that there isn't bias, because there is, right?
Yeah.
Where do we go from there? We don't know.
Yep. All right, so heading on to the next story, I will share my screen again on this one. We've already talked about Breonna Taylor and what's going on with her, the fact that it's been going on 200 days, and the people that we know who murdered her are still free, not charged, still on the force, still doing their job. As opposed to, say, an Ahmaud Arbery or a George Floyd, who those folks there's been some movement. The people who are responsible have been arrested, have been charged. Some are in jail, some are out of jail, but there is ongoing, tasks to rectify and bring justice to the situation. For Breonna, there's been nothing. The attorney general who can bring charges, he's too busy having engagement parties and speaking at the RNC to bring charges against these folks. Well, on the cover of September's issue of Vanity Fair, which is, I think, co-edited and written, an article written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, is covering the magazine. So the issue is, as opposed to some of the other, situations and murders of Black people, she has been the only one that has been memeified. They have this BreonnaCon that's going on in Louisville, which I think is absolutely disgusting. But she's on the cover of Vanity Fair. So my question to you is, do you think that this, similar to what we talked about with the video, do you think this cover, because we know that had she not been murdered, had she just continued her job as an EMT, continued her life, she would never be on the cover of this magazine. Do you think that this is bringing more light and helpful to her? Or do you think it's just another way for them to sell magazines or memify the murder of this woman?
Well, I think, like you mentioned, otherwise we wouldn't be on the cover of Vanity Fair. I don't know the stats on how many Black women have covered Vanity Fair. I would like to believe there have been more prior to Breonna Taylor.
Yes, but not many.
I'm assuming not many.
Correct.
Otherwise, we as a whole would not be featured as much. It does sound like, and it does appear to be, there's not an organized, specific goal, because I think we're all trying to do what we can. The BreonnaCon thing that you mentioned, I saw the flyer, and it's hard to tell if she is the forefront of the conversation, or is she a backdrop to something else, right? In that case, and in the case of this Vanity Fair cover, we have to, and I haven't read it, admittedly, but we have to make sure that she is the central focus of the conversation, and we're not using her as a jumping off point to discuss something else. Because from what I understand, the interest from everybody as it relates to Breonna Taylor is the cops need to be arrested, right? That should be, in my
Bare
opinion,
minimum.
the only focus for you using Breonna Taylor in anything is to when, where, how, what do we need to do to get the cops arrested? Figure out the rest later. If they need to, if they get cash bail and get let out on bail, if they get suspended on paid leave, whatever the case may be, none of that is the case right now. These cops are still out doing their thing. So, in my opinion, if anything is going to mention Breonna Taylor, it needs to be why, what, how, when, where,
And driving toward getting these guys arrested.
getting them off the street, getting them arrested, due process, whatever the case may be, right? Anything else to where you're, like I said, with the Breonna Con, to where you're trying to highlight women in business, no. It needs to be Breonna Taylor, cops in jail.
Yeah.
Not let's use her as, let's focus on other women who are doing whatever. No, we can do that later. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, just not now. Same thing with this Vanity Fair cover. Is she the focus, or is this a conversation about other things, right? In my personal opinion, it should be the focus on getting her the cops who killed her for no reason. For those who don't know about the story, I'm not going to go into it, do the research.
Do your Googles.
They need to be arrested.
Yeah.
Now, after they get arrested and after they go to court and after they get jury trials and after the prosecutors decide whether they're going to charge them or not, then we can have the whole conversation about, whatever the case may be, and then include her as one of the background stories, in addition to George Floyd, in addition to JacobBlake, in addition to Rayshard Brooks, in addition to all the Trayvon, all the way back to Trayvon Martin, all the way back to Mike Brown, so on and so forth.
Tamir Rice, yeah.
Use them as a composite to have this bigger conversation.
Yeah.
But right now, we need to focus on getting them arrested, right?
Right. I completely agree with you. I haven't read the article either. It is by Ta-Nehisi Coates, so I will give some sort of I don't want to say deference, but I will give some sort of credence to the fact that he will highlight what you just said, because he has been a strong voice for social change and for her. And also the painting, the image that's on the cover is a painting by Amy Sherald, who I'm not sure if many people remember. She is the artist that did the presidential portrait of Barack Obama. All those things are great.
That's where I recognize it.
Yep. So they were going, because I saw some people talking about, because I know they're in the art world, they were saying she changed her aesthetic or the way she paints specifically for Breonna, which is great. I'm sure what Ta-Nehisi has written is great. But again, like you said, how is this helping to drive and move the needle forward to get the ball of justice rolling for this woman? It's been going on 200 days since she was murdered. And we wouldn't have even found out about it had it not been for the Black Lives Matter Louisville group, protesting. They've been protesting for weeks and months before it even hit the mainstream that we even knew about this. It was all, under the cover of night because of the way that everything happened. So
and the increasing emphasis on women, specifically Black women, getting the same amount of
exposure,
attention as Black men who have been, killed or unjustly, mistreated by police, right? Because, do you think of Sandra Bland, you think of, all the other women.
Rekia Boyd.
Right. And not the same emphasis as, like a Trayvon Martin or Mike Brown or George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery. Is that in and of itself an issue, right? Is that something with Breonna? And as a result, is that something we're trying to change with Breonna? And as a result, we're kind of overboard because we're really trying to make sure that she doesn't.
And that Black women get the same type of support and visibility as Black men.
Right. So as a result, like you said, she's been memeified. Is that are we? I want to believe that that's not us trying to manipulate or take advantage of a situation in order to get our own sort of name out there. I want to believe that it's an overcompensation of the fact that in the past, black women haven't gotten the same shine. Um, that's what I want to believe. But again,
You know
it,
that's
you
not
know,
true. I
right.
mean, because I mean, if you think back to when George Floyd and even when Elijah McClain were both murdered, people started putting out merchandise, and then the family shut it down and it stopped.
Right.
Breonna's family has done the same thing, but you still have, you know, the mummification, the shirts, the all those type of things, and
The
just to
artwork.
the
I've
artwork.
seen a lot of artwork.
Yeah, to bring it full circle, the reason that the hashtag Say Her Name was even created was because black women weren't getting the same support and the call to action and visibility as, you know, men were. So it's twofold. You have racism and then you have sexism and patriarchy.
Right.
Because I won't even say most, pretty much 99% of these movements, when it comes to, you know, getting justice for black people who have been murdered, and of course it's been overwhelmingly men, are black women. So black women are out there, you know, putting together protests, putting together organizations, you know, rallying people. But then when you have a black woman who this has happened to, you know, it's like, who's going to stand in the gap and to help push this forward?
Right.
We need the same engagement because it's a life. At the end of the day, it's still a life. It's a life that mattered, and it's a life that was taken completely unnecessarily, and it was 100% preventable.
Right.
So yeah. So all right. So let's wrap up the episode. So let's head on over to the hookup. I didn't have anything this week. It looks like you put something in there, which is great because I had nothing.
So iOS 14, the public beta is out, and I actually wrote up a story about some of the 7 cool features that you probably will gravitate to the most when it's actually released and available to the public in the fall. So I actually was able to do a write up of those main features in a PC Mag article. So I definitely put a link to that actual story in PC Mag. And basically, like I mentioned, it just goes over the main features that once you download or install iOS 14, whether it be the public beta or it be the actual release to the public version, these will be the features that you kind of look at the most. You'll want to play with the messages, you want to play with your home screen, you'll want to play with Siri, you'll want to play with some of the security. So I kind of highlight some of those features and how they work. And like I said, I was able to write that up for a PC Mag. So I just dropped a link. So at your leisure, you can go in and take a look at them. Like I said, I'm not going to go through and kind of highlight all of them specifically in this hookup, but I did want to draw that attention. So you can definitely go check that out. So, and show me some support, get the views,
Get the clicks. Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up now while we're talking so we can see your name in print. But it's loading a little bit slower. But in any event, the link is, oh, there it is. Hold on. Let's let you get your shine on real quick. All right, Brother Tech. Terrence Gaines giving his input on the 7 features to try right away for iOS 14. So definitely go in. I won't show you the full article. I'll tease it a little bit so you can go and click on the link and get those clicks up, get the traffic there. So definitely go and take a look, and we'll have the link in the show notes for you to view after the show.
Yep, I appreciate it.
All right. So I think that is it for this week.
Yep.
All right. Don't forget to download, rate, and review us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. You can also hit us up on social medias on all of the platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We are at snobOS Cast. You can also watch us on YouTube at snobOS Cast. And be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. You can also leave us some feedback 2 different ways on our website, snobOScast.com, or shoot us over an email at snobOScast@gmail.com. Again, let us remind you, you too can become a patron of the snobOS podcast. You can go over to patreon.com/snobOScast and sign up for a mere $5 per month, where you will get access to the pre-show content, access to live show taping, and also access to our Discord live chat. And I think that's it.
That is it.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Bye.
Peace.